Greetings. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. I'm Lexi Eve, and welcome back to another Walk Magick video. So I got kind of caught up with other projects, but at the request of a few people, since I put out a previous video on the subject about a year ago, I'm finally swinging back around, and today we're going to be talking about practicing with the Astral Light. So I'm not going to cover what the Astral Light is. In theory, I have probably 2 videos on that. You could search my channel, like if you search YouTube, Lexi Eve, Astral Light, it should pop up. It should say part 1 in the title. Today, this is strictly practical application, how to see and use it. I'll begin with more long-term and, let's say, intermediate to advanced techniques. But then just stick around if you're new. I'm going to swing around to those 2 ideas for those who are just starting out. So if you're new, or at least newer, just bear with me. I'll be going into multiple levels of practice on this subject. Also, just keep in mind that when using any magic, you can do whatever you want with it. But when you do so in a way that is not aligned with your true will, you inevitably end up hurting yourself. So Astral Light, you can do intention magic, and I touch on that very, very briefly, but I've touched on it in other videos, and it's just something you can do with the Astral Light. I've said on this channel quite a few times, and it's my favorite quote when it comes to any type of warning about what you do and taking responsibility for your actions. It happens to be by Stephen King from his book Pet Sematary. What you buy, you own, and what you own always comes back home to you. So with that said, let's begin. For using the Astral Light, just understand that the physical world and Astral Light are intrinsically linked together. All planes are. Some planes just require a higher field of vision to perceive directly. So what you do on the physical plane affects the astral and vice versa. I think it's safe to say that is why when we do ritual on the physical plane, it affects the environment and also our psyche, and once we gain access to that proper state of consciousness, we are able to perceive the astral light with our physical eyes. Think about ringing a bell in ritual. That sound travels and vibrates through the air. It affects all planes. When we do it frequently in many rituals over a long enough period of time, our mind is propelled into the ritual state of consciousness produced by your invocations or rituals. So the sound of the bell shocks the brain into that state immediately once you are experiencing enough with it. Think of it as a sort of magical classical conditioning. You hear the bell, boom, and from having rang that bell before doing so many rituals, you get to a point when that bell rings, your mind instantly goes into that proper state of altered consciousness, almost like a trance state. It's for this reason that as magicians, we should be very careful with our words. We manifest as we speak. Words spoken by the human is the below of the logos, of the God above, which creates the light. Word itself affects the astral light and can manifest our will, whether we intend to or not. Thus, discipline yourself about what you allow yourself to say, and let all words be geared towards the accomplishment of the great work. And as word originates in thought, we now need to focus on the mind, as without it, we are not able to affect anything, nor see anything. Eyesight takes place in the brain and not the eyes after all. As much as the ringing of a bell or spoken word vibrates and affects the astral, thought does so as well, your thoughts. The more focused and powerful your thoughts, the more will and influence you can exert upon the astral. This is why visualization is amongst one of the most powerful tools within the magician's arsenal. Those who are under air signs, especially Aquarius, are said to pluck thoughts out of the ether psychically. The symbol for Aquarius, those 2 squiggly lines, is this air, this ether, the space where thought and sounds are transmitted. There are many visual techniques to begin with, including the middle pillar exercise, the LBRP, God form assumptions, etc. But we'll get more into that momentarily. First, I want to speak about discipline and focus. Being able to maintain visuals for long periods of time is the way to master using the astral light. For this reason, I cannot stress enough how important it is to get to the practice of dharana. First, learn to sit still in asana for long durations. This will breed within you a discipline over your body and mind, which are the vehicle for the spirit, and then take that discipline to the next levels by mastering holding images in your mind, starting with Liber E, and then such text as Liber Batro Freno Bus Momaxia, where you work towards holding the entire solar system in its proper proportions in your mind. Also Liber Taurus, where you focus on the mind and brain, analyzing thought and its origin. Also, Libri, Nu, and Had have many beneficial techniques. There are loads of other ones, but those are, if you go in those orders, Liber E, Liber Batro, Freno Buso, Mo Machia, Liber Taurus, and then Liber Nu and Had, I would take it in that order. You'll build up over time many abilities with how you discipline your mind, and you gain a deeper sense of focus. Again, mastering the mind is vital to astral powers, as well as magic in all forms. Take the following quote from Liber Libre, quote, "To obtain magical power, learn to control thought. Admit only those ideas that are in harmony with the end desired, and not every stray and contradictory idea that presents itself. Fixed thought is a means to an end. Therefore pay attention to the power of silent thought and meditation. The material act is but the outward expression of thy thought, and therefore hath it been said that the thought of foolishness is sin. Thought is the commencement of action, and if a chance thought can produce much effect, what cannot fixed thought do?" End quote. That said, thought itself is a projection and has weight. It can be just as powerful at affecting the astral as sound and actions. When casting an intention, if you have a thought fixed in your mind, you can manifest it at the climax of a ritual, be it through the medium of a cake of light, orgasm, or other astral images projected by your will on the astral plane. Those are the things that take considerable time to make progress. Dharana, all of those type of mental trainings. For those newer, we usually want proof that what we're doing is having an effect, and that we're not just performing empty words and gestures. And I think the idea of seeing something supernatural often appeals to many. So, how does one see the astral? How do you build that ability from scratch? In short, it takes practice. You have to do practices, sometimes even when you feel like you're not getting a result. But we're going to go into detail on how you can build this practice up from the beginning. What worked for me at the very beginning was learning first how to move energy through my body, to the point that you could feel energy moving through your body. So I have a video on psychic vampirism on this channel, and in that one, I go over the very first technique of that sort, which I recommend starting out with. Body scans, pratyahara, focusing all of one's consciousness into a particular point of the body. And then, once you can move energy through the body, learning to extend it outward, as well as absorb it into yourself. I also have a video on what I call the circulation of light on this channel, and I think it's very good for learning to move energy through the body, and it also helps with visual practices. And I suggest doing that after you've mastered body scanning. It also helps with creating visuals and producing sensations through the body by sheer will. It is by will that we do everything in magic. So in learning to produce sensations of a specific kind in the body, then we can learn to produce effects externally. It's like invoking elemental energy over the course of weeks and months, so that you learn what it feels like. Then when it's present, you know exactly what you are dealing with based on your past experiences. So again, the first steps I immediately offer: body scans, circulation of light, pratyahara. Also, in the Magician's Workbook by Donald Tyson, there's a practice for invoking the rosy cross on one's body and producing elemental sensations based on the arms of the cross of the rosy cross. There are links in the description in the order you should work on these. Next up, God form assumptions. see Libra O, and I have a video on Libra O on this channel that you should go over. So I've gone over that entire text before, but in short, you create in your mind the image of a chosen deity and lay that image over your body so that you see yourself becoming it in your mind. After you've done this daily for some weeks and months, you should try it accompanied by an invocation of that deity as well. What is vitally important for Libra O and the Astral Light is to know that if you are keeping your mind firmly fixed upon exactly what you are doing, that thought accompanied by your will is producing the desired effects upon the Astral Light. That fixed thought produces the effects. The same goes for the LBRP pentagrams and casting the circle, but I have one further suggestion about all this. I was doing Hatha Yoga quite heavily at the time, and someone gave me the suggestion that as I was doing a specific movement with my head and neck, I should visualize my nose carving a line through space with my movement. So for things like the LBRP or just drawing shapes into the Astral Light in general, using your magical weapon, focus your vision upon the tip of that weapon, be it a wand, a dagger, or a finger, and see the space where the weapon draws this line. Focus on that line intently in your mind's eye and think of it as though you are specifically carving a line into space, like drawing a line in the sand with a stick. The next thing you should know is that the tip of the wand corresponds with the phoenix. The Astral Light becomes focused in that tip and leaves a trail in accordance with the thought and will of the magician. So, work on mentally visualizing a spark of light on the tip of your magical weapon, drawing the shapes upon the astral. Next, after you've gotten a good grip on these techniques, move energy through your arm to the tip of the wand. The only way I could describe what I mean here is that you are working towards magnetizing the tip of the wand to conduct astral light. Then by thought and will, make it remain suspended in the air where you drew it. I suggest making quick fluid straight lines as you draw. I don't know why, but doing it quickly makes it easier, at least for myself, to produce shapes when beginning. Once you can do all of that, it isn't much harder to take the Astral Light and shape it into whatever you need it to be. Maybe one day I'll speak on magnetizing the body of light and astral shapes so that they carry specific energy, intent, or powers, but that'll be another video, possibly. For getting started, I have two other suggestions: Libra Resh and Rising on the Plains. The former you could start anytime. In fact, I highly recommend you begin working with it 4 times daily immediately, doing your solar adorations. I also have a video about Libra Resh on this channel, and it will go over everything you need to know about it. But I bring it up because it works with solar energy. The sun is the lower form of the divine light of creation, at very least symbolically. The physical plane is the crystallized form of both of those lights, and the astral is somewhere in between the crystallized light of the physical plane and solar energy. Not necessarily sunlight, but solar energy. So in working with Libra Resh, after you have all the nuances down, you begin to become hyper-aware of the sun in the Earth's orbit. And you start carrying a load of invoked solar energy. It is, in my opinion, a result of this long-term invocation that I noticed after doing it for a while that as I was reciting the adorations, I would start to see a shimmer in my temple space. All through the air, a sparkling light, like large glitter floating through the air. Then, after more time went by, I saw it more as a blizzard of that light. So it's for this reason I believe that Libra Resh is most beneficial over a long-term practice, 6 months to a year daily, maybe more depending on the person, that they will have altered their consciousness with these solar invocations, and will have attuned their mind past seeing only the physical, seeing the higher plane of the astral light. So if you think of the solar energy, or Tiferet, or Sol, right, on the Tree of Life, as that center of the tree, I look at Malkuth almost as the physical plane, right? It's not exactly, but it's almost the physical plane. Yesod is pretty much the astral plane, or at least the beginning of the astral plane. Then above that is solar energy. So if you're attuning your consciousness to Sol through the path of Resh, which is also Sol, and you start focusing on the sun, on Sol, invoking solar energy, you're actually bringing your consciousness up to a higher plane than Yesod, where the astral light or the astral realms begin, the astral planes begin. So if you could raise your consciousness up that high, you should be able to bring your consciousness high enough that you could see the astral, which is not even as high as the plane of Tifereth. At least, that's my theory on this. Regardless, try doing Liber-Esh for 6 months, a year, 2 years, every single day, not skipping it, unless in emergency, or, if you forget, go and do it as soon as you remember that you forgot to do one of your 4 adorations. And see what happens. For me, like I said, I started to see sparkling astral light in my temple every single time I was doing it. So, definitely affects something, at least in my experience. And then lastly, rising on the plains. I should make mention of the middle pillar exercise. Visualizing the aura and crystallizing it in that practice helps a lot. Essentially, this is for those who can at least see the astral light and thus can begin to work on accessing the astral plane. I mention the middle pillar because you're creating that aura around you, and if you could do that, it's not much different to create any type of visual around you or external from you. So I think it's a really good practice to start with the middle pillar, and once you could do that visually and you could feel energy going up and down that central column and creating that egg of light around you, it isn't too much different to create an astral form of yourself a couple feet in front of you, right? And so let's go into this. So like I said, essentially you're creating an astral body external to you. You enter it by simply shifting your consciousness into it, and then following the instructions as outlined in Liber O for what to do next. So you could see my video on Liber O for a little more about it, but I want to close by saying that if you can make progress in rising on the plains, you can verify your visions by the confirmation of an external source such as a friend or teacher, then you should be able to astral project. Astral projection and rising on the plains are almost the same thing. I would say the only difference is that your body of light exits the body, rather than you're just shifting your consciousness into an astral form that you create. So it's like actually leaving your body versus creating an image and just shifting your mind into it. It's very similar, but I think the semantically there's a difference there. So I hope some of this helps. Follow the things I outlined in order, and I believe given enough practice, persistence, and determination, anyone can make amazing progress with working with the astral light. So I'm going to end this here. Love is the law. Love under will. I'll catch y'all in the next one.